In the synagogue, we greet each other with a phrase, Shabbat Shalom. So Shabbat is the Sabbath, and Shalom means wishing you a day of peace and of completeness. So I'll say Shabbat Shalom, and then you're supposed to say it back to me.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom. So there's a humorous story about how people from various religions react to some very disturbing news. The breaking news is that a meteorite is heading toward the Earth, and it's most certainly going to strike the Earth, and unfortunately, millions of people are going to be killed. Well, the Christians, they're at church, they're engaged in fervent prayer, asking God to intercede on their behalf and to save them. Now, the Buddhists, they're at the temple, and they're meditating with the sole intention of accepting what is and not to resist. But the synagogues are empty. Where are the Jews? Oh, they're busy building a rocket in order to leave before the meteorite gets here. So it's a very humorous story, but I think it does illustrate a very significant aspect of Judaism. This belief that we are co-creators with God, and that God and humans together are responsible for the future that we're going to experience.
But wait a minute. Don't we, as students of New Thought, also believe that we create our experience by our beliefs, and our thoughts, and our subsequent actions? Indeed, we do. In fact, as I was studying to become a licensed Unity teacher, I was required to take an entire course on just the creative process alone. This morning, we would like to explore what New Thought and Judaism have to say about the process of creation. We all know the creation story, how God spoke the world that we see into existence. This story is actually a metaphor for the creative process that we practice in our daily lives. We read in Genesis chapter 1, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and morning, the first day.
On a handout sheet that you have, I wrote down in Hebrew what it says. And read along. It says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. And the translation, a very good translation, would be, at the beginning, God began creating the heavens and the earth. And as Liz just read, most English translations state, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But let's look just for a second at the Hebrew and see if we can begin to distinguish how this rather minor difference in translation can have very significant theological implications. First, notice the Hebrew word bara. Do you see it there? Bara. It's the first word in the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah, in the book of Genesis. It does not connote an action completed in the past, like its English translations created, but rather bara clearly connotes an action that started in the past, but is still continuing today, and will also continue into the future. So the Jewish concept of creation is something that's ongoing, and it's not yet complete. Creation is an event that begins new each day, each morning, and each moment of our lives. Together, with the help of God, with the divine Spirit, we continue the creation anew each day.
The third principle of unity states, we are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. And actually, I got this from your website. It's stated everywhere, but it's on your website. And this is what we call, this principle is alluding to the law of mind action. It's what we call it in Unity. The law of mind action is an ongoing process by which abstract thoughts become manifest forms in the physical space. Through the power of thoughts generated by both our thinking and feeling natures, we have the ability to shape and form our world. Charles Fillmore, one of the founders of Unity, writes in Atom-Smashing Power of Mind, "The ideas of God are potential forces waiting to be set in motion through proper formative vehicles. The thinking faculty in man is such a formative vehicle. And it is through this that the visible universe has its existence. Man does not create anything, if by this term is meant the producing of something from nothing, but he does make the formless up into form. Or rather, it is through man's conscious cooperation that the one mind forms the universe. We experienced this process not too long ago when we decided that it was time to right-size our living space, and I've shared different aspects of that with you during the various talks. However, I'd like to take a look at the creative process that went on for us during that time. The idea to right-size came to each one of us at about the same time. Kind of coincided with our youngest child's last year, senior year in high school. Decided this huge house was way too big for the two of us. So I began searching the internet for condos that were for sale in the Columbus area. And as I poured over this inventory, the abstract thought of right-sizing started to take form. Soon we knew which community we would like to create our new home in. So we went to this community several times and we walked through the community, and soon we knew which street we wanted to create our new home on. Soon after that, a unit was up for sale on that street, and after visiting this unit with our realtor, our new home came into manifest form. But the creation is not yet complete. We're still creating, and we'll continue to create our new home for as long as we live in it. Currently, we're in the process of building a screened-in porch so we can enjoy the beautiful birds that are out there and the woods that come up right to the back of our unit. And I've got a couple of projects planned for after that as well.
Most of us think that the creation story in Genesis, it teaches us what? That God worked for 6 days, and on the seventh day God rested. Or that the divine energy ceased all of its activities. But however, on the seventh day, we read that God was very active. He blessed the seventh day, and he made it holy. Because on it, he rested from all of the work of creating that he had done. But what does this possibly mean for us today? Often when I'm talking to my Christian friends, they describe the Sabbath as a day of rest, a day where you do no activities at all. But Jews think of it as very, very differently than that. For Jews, the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, is not a passive resting. There's another layer there I'd like to explain to you about the creation story. The process of creation continued for 6 days, according to the account we read in Genesis. And on the seventh day, so what's the day? What's the seventh day called? Shabbat. It actually means seven. Shabbat, it means seven. Something else radically different happened. So according to the Jewish notions of time, we're to live our first 6 days of the week as active participants in the world. We're to work to effectuate change and to improve the world as we relate to others and our own environment. In other words, during the first 6 days of the week, we focus on our activities and our divinely inspired abilities to create, to modify, to make changes, and to improve the world around us. That may be in our interactions with other people, maybe working on a goal that will improve the human condition, or maybe working on ourselves to alleviate pain or suffering that we see around our own lives. So you could say that during the 6 days of the week, we and God are more or less equal partners in this creation event, this repairing of the world. But on the seventh day, on Shabbat, the goal or aspiration is instead to allow the divine to be the active or main agent in this co-creation of the world. In so doing, Jews refrain from all normal physical activities. Instead, on Shabbat, we strive to become more present, more aware, more conscious of the union of the divine and human aspects of creation. So on the first 6 days, we focus on doing. But on the seventh, on Shabbat, we're supposed to focus on being and becoming. So on Friday night, so Shabbat begins Friday night, Jewish days begin in the evening and run to the next evening. We bless and light 2 candles. Why 2? Each candle represents a different aspect of our consciousness. The first candle represents what we call the Shekinah consciousness, the nurturing quality of the divine spirit that works through each of us, filling the activities of our daily life, the 6 days of the week I was talking about, filling them with compassion and connection to each other. The second candle, however, represents divine consciousness, the remembrance that you are a part of the vast, eternal flow of being that is the cosmos. And on Shabbat, we aspire to remember and focus on that divine quality. The creative energy that we have because we are made in the image of God. So the blessing over the candle, it has two parts. We say to Zachor and to Shamor. To Zachor means to remember who we really are in our divine essence, and to protect the knowledge, or Shamor, of the Shabbat experience. We recite these phrases because on Shabbat, we seek to experience the union with the divine consciousness that has been implanted within each of us, and to experience its healing effects on our hearts and souls.
We have a similar understanding of consciousness in unity thought as well. Every week, when we bless our offerings, we affirm that nurturing quality of spirit that flows through us. We say, divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all the good that I am, all the good that I have, all the good that I give, and all the good that I receive. This is an expression of our Shekinah consciousness. During the prayer for protection, we remember that we are part of a vast and eternal flow of being when we affirm, wherever I am, God is, and all is well. This is an expression of the divine consciousness that Dan just spoke of. When we use both aspects of consciousness, both our Shekinah and our divine consciousness, and create from the union of these consciousness, two aspects of consciousness, our highest good will easily manifest as a natural result, bringing us much joy and fulfillment. However, whenever we create from a state of consciousness that is not united, the result may not be our highest good, and it will certainly fail to bring us the joy and the fulfillment that we seek. I think each one of us has experienced a second type of creation, where we've created from a rather lower level of consciousness. I know Dan and I have experienced this type of creation, and it came to light in our own lives, again, not too long ago, in this process of right-sizing. So before we moved to our condo in Gehenna, which we dearly, dearly love, absolutely love, we had a beautiful home in Pickerington, right down the street from Ralph, actually. Despite its beauty and potential, our time spent there seemed to be full of work, full of worry, and full of responsibility. I noticed that this home did not bring me joy and fulfillment. Instead, it actually made me feel somewhat diminished, like I just can't keep up with it. I can't take care of this home. It has so much potential. I can't create all that I see that can be here, you know? And at the closing, I was somewhat surprised, and Dan was too, because we spoke of it afterwards, of the enormous sense of relief and joy that we felt as we were released from this beautiful home, on this beautiful piece of property. And we were somewhat confused by the eagerness and the gratitude of the buyers that they expressed as they purchased it. Sig Paulson, a beloved Unity teacher and the author of the 13 Commandments, gives us some insights to what's going on here in what I just described to you. He cautions that we must not use the creations of another individual as a model for our own creation. We, as ourselves, in everything that we are, we're perfect, we're whole, and we're complete. We're an expression of the divine. We're not to look to someone else for the blueprint for our creation. As I think back to the time in our lives when we created that beautiful home in Pickerington, I realized that we were not creating from the union of our Shekinah and divine consciousness. Instead, we were creating from what I call the keeping up with and surpassing the Joneses level of consciousness. We were allowing the dictates of mass consciousness to create the blueprint for our creation. As co-creators with the divine, we understand that the desires of our heart are God-given. And it is our job to identify those desires that emanate from within us, not those that emanate from without. From our divine consciousness is where our desires need to come, and not to be distracted by the desires that are given to others. Each of us is a divine original, a unique expression of God. Fulfillment comes from allowing the divine to express through you as you. Trying to mimic another's expression only brings us frustration and unhappiness.
So, what does it mean to create from this union of the Shekinah consciousness and the divine consciousness, and what does it have to do with Shabbat? So in English, we read, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And as I said earlier, in Hebrew, we're told to both zachor, to remember, and to shamor, to guard the Sabbath. So what does it mean to remember and guard? Well, this principle finds expression in the realization and remembrance that on Shabbat, we are to combine the physical and the spiritual worlds and to see the unity of it all. Now, the Talmud, which is a collection of Jewish wisdom literature, it tells us, it's a very interesting story, that on Shabbat, each of us is given, just for that one day of Shabbat, an additional soul. One soul represents the Shekinah consciousness, and the other represents the divine consciousness. And on Shabbat, the two souls are intertwined into a divine union. I think I left my candles over there. I've actually brought a little visual aid. Thought you might find it interesting. So what the candle looks like, actually it's beautifully intertwined. And there's several wicks, and they all are lit as one. There's the unity of it all. And so we call this a Havdalah candle. And the wicks represent the union of the various aspects of our lives, of our consciousness. So Shabbat is not simply the cessation of all work, but it rather has to do with focusing our attention and resources on being and not doing. The 6 days of the week are a period of working, of building and repairing, but Shabbat is the cessation of that work, which brings home the significance and sense of achievement that the building has generated. In other words, on Shabbat, we're supposed to look back at the previous week, rejoice, and relax into the realization of all that we have and all that is. Furthermore, Shabbat signals the creation of a world of spiritual rejuvenation, not rest in the normal English sense of the word, but a clear break from the mundane material existence. On Shabbat, we relish in the knowledge that what we have created is not just good, but you know what does God say when he creates man? He always says, this was good, this was good, this was good, and when he creates man, he says, very good. Tov Ma'od. That's what it says in the book of Genesis. We weren't just good, we were very good. I think it's beautiful. So on Shabbat, we view all of our material pursuits as if they're totally completed. Our business and work should be off our radar. Shabbat removes us from a world of disjointed details and puts us into the totality and unity of creation. On Shabbat, we can see how the big picture comes together. We can rethink our priorities and consider what the important things in life really are. That is why Jews say that Shabbat is a semblance of the world to come. Or they may say, Shabbat is a return to the Garden of Eden. The time in the future when we, with our eternal souls, will have clarity that we really live in a perfect world where everything works out for the best. So Shabbat is really a weekly rendezvous with enhanced spirituality, physical enjoyment, restfulness, peace, and a stronger connection to the divine force of the cosmos that flows through each of us and throughout creation. Without the weekly Shabbat experience, I think the cycle of time would spiral out of control. And that is why Shabbat is the essence of Judaism and Jewish life. The journey from the 6 days of work into the transcendent Shabbat experience, a merging of the past, present, and future.
So the project of human life is to make the ordinary holy by remembering and keeping the Sabbath. How can we do this? We offer what we call the Sabbath or Shabbat experiment as a weekly spiritual practice for you to consider. Rabbi Joshua Heschel explains the meaning of the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week we live under the tyranny of things of space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. Sabbath is a time in which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. So what if we made the intention to observe the Sabbath as a part of our weekly spiritual practice? What might this look like? We offer some practices to serve as a starting point for remembering and keeping the Sabbath. The first thing to do to begin your Sabbath time really doesn't matter. The Jews have a separate time as a special dedicated time, but I think we can create a Sabbath whenever we choose to. We can make this time holy, separate, special. So to begin this special time, to begin your Sabbath, I would suggest a simple ritual to center yourself and to make the time and the space holy, sacred, and set apart. A ritual is a sequence of activities involving gestures, words, objects that are performed in a sequestered place and performed according to a set sequence. Rituals provide a template to guide our emotions and actions according to the special situation. Thereby, they bring a sense of familiarity and order in our life. Here are some simple rituals you can use to begin your Sabbath. You can write a candle blessing, similar to what Dan described earlier, to say as you light 2 candles to mark the arrival of Sabbath, the time that you're setting aside as holy and sacred. The candles remind us of the totality of our divine consciousness, and they serve as an outward expression of our intention to relax into that realization of all that we have and all that is, and to rejoice. Another thing you could do is to read a favorite and powerful poem to celebrate the beginning of Sabbath, or sing a song that resonates with your spirit at that time and in that moment to celebrate the beginning of Sabbath, or record a guided meditation in your own voice and use this to begin your Sabbath with a centering practice of meditation guided by yourself for yourself.
Once you've centered in the sacred space of Shabbat, I would ask you to turn your attentions to your creations. As I said, we are co-creators of our universe with the divine, that divine spark that resides in each of us. Now, Jewish thought teaches us that it's primarily through our actions that the divine is expressed in our world. That's why the joke, the story that I started with, the talk with, is really so funny, but it's also so true. I don't even know if Jews would laugh at the joke. They'd say, well, duh. But Jews would expect to use their divinely given intelligence to build the rocket ship to escape the meteor heading toward the earth. In Judaism, we talk about praying with our hands and our feet much more than praying with our mouths. So the idea of co-creation is tied to another fundamental Jewish concept called tikkun olam. Tikkun means to repair, olam is the world. So what does it mean to tikkun olam, to repair the world? This is actually a set of how we are supposed to be co-creators with the divine. What does it mean to be made b'tselem Elohim, to be made in the image of God? Being made in the image of God means that just as God began creating the heavens and the earth, so must we do our part to continue with God, with the divine, in the creating of this world. So we are to ask ourselves, what are the elements in our lives and the lives of others that need tikkunim, that need to be tikkuned, that need to be repaired? Tikkun olam, or repairing the world, means in essence to work to restore the world to its sacred or holy state, to see the potential of perfection in everything around us. This means that as we meet others, our goal is to find that divine spark, the holy spark that lies within everyone and everything, and work to bring it to its surface. In so doing, we are continuing the co-creation with the divine of the cosmos and acknowledging the unity of it all, which is Shabbat.
We read in Genesis that God reflected on its creation, blessing it, calling it good and very good. Gratitude is essential to rejoicing in all that we have and in all there is, which is the goal of observing the Shabbat. Gratitude is a common and powerful spiritual practice, and we have a lot of experience with deepening gratitude in our lives. I know one common practice is to keep a gratitude journal and begin every morning or to finish the day every evening with writing down at least 3 things for which you're grateful during the day. And if you've ever done that practice, I've done that for periods of time, you'll notice a huge change in how you are being throughout the day and the lenses with which you're looking at your world through during the day. You start to see more of the good and less of the bad. It is certainly a relief from some of those things that we suffer from in our daily lives. And it also is funny, what I noticed in my gratitude practice is how the things I was grateful for changed. At the beginning, I'm grateful for the good stuff. As I go on and deepen that practice, I become grateful for the stuff that is not so good. Because from a heightened perspective, I can see the good in it that I was blinded to before. So gratitude is a very essential part in observing this the Sabbath and setting this time, is making this time sacred and making this time holy.
So Jewish ethical practice is called Musar. And there are actually 13 character traits that we're to focus our attention and intention on. And gratitude is one of these Musar soul traits. I love the Hebrew word for gratitude. It's actually 4 words, but it's hakarat hatov. So what does that mean? Hakarat means to call out, to name, to name by recognizing, or to see, to hakarat, to see what? Hatov, the good that's already there. When you open up to the trait of gratitude, you see clearly and accurately how much good there is in your life. Gratitude affirms that the aspects of your life you think are lacking are in reality still there. They're just hidden from your view, from your consciousness, until you say, hakarat hatov, I'm calling out the goodness of this. So in striving for gratitude, no one's saying you ought to put on rose-colored glasses and to obscure all shortcomings. Remember, our job is to repair the world. However, we can only work to better our world when we first, hakarat hatov, when we first call out, when we first see, when we first recognize the good that's already there. Our focus is to be open to all that is with appreciation. For me, it's often too easy to focus on the deficiencies in my experiences of the world. But when I focus and call out the good, I'm able to experience gratitude and appreciation. So we want to conclude to say that in Judaism, Shabbat is not an individual practice. It's rather something that takes place in community. Now sometimes it's the community of family and friends, and sometimes it's the larger community of the synagogue. And it's customary to welcome the Shabbat with a chant. So at the bottom of your handout sheet, I was hoping that you would participate with us. I want to teach you a little Shabbat chant. I think it's very easy and it's very beautiful. I think it's very fitting, not only for today, not only for the community we find ourselves in, but also the greater world. I think needs a little bit more of this, maybe. But I wanted to teach you the Hebrew. Do you see at the bottom of the page? It's really simple. It's hinne. Can you say that for me? Hinne matov.
Hinne matov.
Good. That's behold how good. Tov is good. Behold how good. Hinne matov u'ma na'im. U'ma na'im. And pleasant. How good and pleasant. Here's the part I think you'll like. Shevet achim. Shevet achim. Okay, to dwell together. Gam yachad. Gam yachad, as one or in unity, and they're gonna help play. Good. It's and so basically you repeat the first line twice. So just read the first line with me. Hinne matov u'mana'im. You do that twice, and then you do shevet achim gam yachad. Okay, they're gonna help me. Matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. One more time. Hinne matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. It's going to change. Hinne matov shevet achim gam yachad. One more time. Hinne matov shevet achim gam yachad. How good and pleasant it is for everyone to live together as one in unity. And I would say to you, Shabbat Shalom. And what that really means is Shabbat is the Sabbath, and Shalom doesn't mean peace. It really means to be complete and to be whole. Shabbat Shalom.